Part 53. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 521. There are many ways to make money in the economic society, or in other words, there are many ways to raise money in a short period of time. You can crowdfund, find partners, take out loans, and use the principle of leverage. Even if Su Ming has only tens of millions of assets on hand, he can raise hundreds of millions or even hundreds of millions of funds in a short period of time. Su Ming believes that with his current connections, this is not difficult. But he doesn't want to raise money in this way and introduce other capital. Even if he buys the zoo, he can't have 100% control over the zoo. Capital is bloodthirsty. When fighting, the more you stand on your side, the more you will take away when sharing the spoils. The privatization of the zoo is just one part of Su Ming's plan. There is no very urgent threat now, forcing him to exchange the cost of income and management rights for the support of capital. He doesn't want to waste a lot of effort and finally come up with a privatized zoo that is subject to others. Making money is not a top priority. Before considering the privatization of the zoo, the government's consent must be obtained first. It is true that Yangchuan Zoo has been restructured. There are many restructured enterprises in Yangchuan and even the whole country, but the restructuring does not mean that they can be privatized. If it is a pure production and operation enterprise, for example, if Yangchuan Toys is restructured, privatization is very simple. Just buy it and take over the personnel, equipment, and debts of the toy, but more restructuring units involve all aspects, not just paying money. Especially for zoos, assets are one part, animal ownership is another part, and its public welfare and popular science nature is the real meaning of its existence. The government can give up management rights, but it is impossible to allow zoos to change to other purposes. If privatization is carried out, this is difficult to guarantee from a legal point of view. Unless the zoo is listed and directly faces the capital market, it can acquire shares with money. Of course, this is the acquisition method that Su Ming is most reluctant to carry out. In that case, the money required is too much, which is not something he can afford now. So we have to talk to the government first, talk about the intention, or at least talk about the possibility of privatization, before we can talk about how to get money. In the matter of zoo privatization, officials of Laohe's level have no decision-making power, and can only play the role of a middleman to pass on information. Even Wang Jianshi's right to speak is very limited. On the one hand, the privatization of the zoo involves many departments and units. Wang Jianshi is now in charge of economic construction, and it is not up to him alone to make the decision. On the other hand, he is only an executive vice mayor and a member of the municipal party committee. The privatization of the zoo requires the entire municipal party committee to discuss it, and the province finally nods. Although Wang Jianshi has no decision-making power, he can play a pivotal role. So Su Ming specially found time to make an appointment with Wang Jianshi to talk. Wang Jianshi is a busy man now, and it is not easy to meet him. It's not that he is putting on airs. When a leader reaches his level, he is often helpless. The daily work schedule is dense. Temporary adjustment of one work will have a chain reaction that affects a large number of other affairs. Su Ming first called Wang Jianshi's secretary. The secretary recognized Su Ming's voice, hesitated for a moment, and said that Vice Mayor Wang was meeting with the municipal party committee leadership team. As soon as the meeting was over, he would report to Vice Mayor Wang and call Su Ming back as soon as possible. When Su Ming made an appointment with Wang Jianshi, the live broadcast platform association meeting in the capital was also coming to an end. The so-called federation is a general term, including the celebration ceremony for the formal establishment of the association, the closing reception, and the seminar for the formulation of the convention. The most important part is the seminar. Fortunately, Su Ming had the foresight to not come. For the discussion alone, People from all walks of life held dozens of meetings of various sizes for more than a month before finally formulating a convention, including constraints on industry behavior, suggestions for handling and resolving disputes within the industry, and the responsibilities and obligations of members of each association. There were a total of 26 major projects and hundreds of small details. Since each detail will have a wide impact in actual implementation, and even affect the actual interests of one or more companies, the discussion at the meeting was very intense. Let alone other things, just the membership fee was argued for a whole day. There are two focuses. The first is the amount of membership fees. According to common sense, for a spontaneously formed association, the membership fee is only symbolic. For a company that can open a live broadcast platform, it is not painful at all, just a drizzle. Wang Hao suggested that the amount of the membership fee can be set higher. This money is similar to a deposit. If an enterprise violates the convention, the deposit will be deducted. If it abides by the convention, it can be returned. In this way, the amount of this membership fee will be so large that many companies will feel a little painful. The benefits are obvious. The association is a loose organization. Although it has formulated a convention, it has no power to enforce the law. Even if a company does not abide by the convention, the association has no good way to punish it. Rules are not afraid of imperfections, but they are afraid of being violated repeatedly. As long as a few units fail to abide by the convention several times, this convention that took a month to develop, killed countless brain cells, and dried countless saliva will become a dead letter. In the short term, the members of the association seem to be free, but in the long term, the original intention of establishing the association will no longer exist, which is not conducive to long-term development. With this membership fee, the association has a trump card, and the binding force of the convention on enterprises will be greatly enhanced. Once an enterprise violates the convention, deduction or a part of the deduction is enough to make the enterprise feel painful. Although it still cannot guarantee that all enterprises abide by the convention 100%, it will greatly increase the cost of violating the convention. Where there is punishment, there is reward. Because it contains a deposit, the membership fees of all enterprises added together are quite large. If used for investment, the interests involved are too great, but for the sake of transparency, no one can move it, so it is placed in the bank to earn interest. The interest alone is enough to cover the association's annual expenses. Doing so greatly increases the authority of the association. Since they come to participate in this meeting, it means that most companies support the original intention of the association and are willing to establish an industry group to seek cooperation opportunities with each other. At the same time, the importance of the 3 vice-chairman units responsible for the daily management of the association will be greatly increased. Although it sounds like a lot of money to pay at first glance, after Wang Hao's careful analysis, most of the participating companies quickly expressed their approval. The first focus is how much money to pay, which is very different. Super Zoo. Author, Yan Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 522. There are 2 focuses on the issue of membership fees. The first is whether to pay more or less, and how to use the money paid. The second focus is on how much each company should pay. There are more than 20 companies participating in the association, each with a different size and background. The largest one has a background in a real estate group and is not short of money at all. It can completely cultivate a giant live broadcast platform by spending money. The smallest one has a real estate group background and is not short of money at all. One is a business started by several college students after graduation. It has received venture capital and is not yet profitable. Therefore, how much each family should pay is very particular. The general principle has been set before. This membership fee is based on the deposit model, and the amount is relatively large. For example, for the same $3 million, for large companies, the binding force is not strong, but for small companies, It is almost life-threatening. It is still unclear whether they can come up with the money. Even if they come up with the money, otherwise, it will also drain the company of a large amount of liquidity, which is not conducive to development. In the end, the only choice is to withdraw from the association. This is of course not the original intention of the association to collect membership fees. What about different amounts of membership fees charged according to the size of the enterprise? The question comes again. We are all members of the association. We all have the same obligations and enjoy the same rights. Why does your family pay less and mine pays more? Fighting local tyrants? What's more, among the companies participating in the conference, there are big ones at the middle and small ones at the two ends. After all, there are only a few really rich giants and poor little guys. A large number of companies of similar sizes are concentrated in the middle. The specific scale of each company is really unclear. It's hard to measure. It's impossible for the association to send accountants to various companies to check their assets, right? That doesn't mean it's like a house raid. Even if the association doesn't have such great power, the companies will never agree. Some companies have proposed that those who pay more membership fees will enjoy more rights, and those who pay less will have smaller rights. It seems reasonable, but in this way, the association companies will inevitably be divided into 3, 6, or 9 grades. The purpose of the existence of the association is to unite and help each other and coordinate conflicts in the industry. Such a division into 3 or 6 levels is completely contrary to the original intention. Finally, Wang Hao and the other 2 vice presidents came up with a solution. In principle, each company charges different fees. But it is not collected based on the size of the enterprise, because the association cannot calculate the value of the enterprise's size. For each enterprise, 10% of the net profit of the previous year. For example, last year, if you earned 5 million, then this year's membership fee will be 500,000. At the end of the year, if there are no violations, the 500,000 will be returned intact. If there are violations, it will be deducted according to the severity of the violation. Regardless of whether it is deducted or not, in the second year, the membership fee will be paid at 10% of the previous year. This approach has several obvious benefits. 10% of profits is a sum of money that cannot be completely ignored for each enterprise, but it will not affect the development layout of the enterprise. Those enterprises that do not make any money do not even have to pay dues. Good statistics. Regular companies will have turnover and profit statements every year, which are clear and intuitive. Of course, if someone makes false accounts, there is nothing you can do about it. It is illegal and the association has no right to regulate it. The issue of membership fees was discussed all day long. There are many similar focuses of debate, such as the specific rights and obligations of each family, the principles and intensity of punishment, the specific rights and obligations of each family, etc. After finally agreeing on a convention, we were done. The last party was a small farewell reception, and many people even brought their female companions. When the host saw that almost everyone had arrived, he said with a smile, "In the previous meeting, Mr. Wang from Daowin Entertainment was full of firepower. I suggest that we first ask Mr. Wang from Daowin Entertainment to say a few words to everyone." After finishing speaking, he took the lead in applauding in welcome. Amidst the applause, Wang Hao took Peng Shui on stage, raised his glass in all directions, and spoke loudly. Peng Shui cuddled up next to the fat man with a happy look on her face. When Su Ming arrived at the VIP box of the Minranja tea house, Wang Jianshi's secretary was already guarding the door and nodded to Su Ming. Su Ming smiled, pushed the door open and walked into the tea room. He saw Wang Jianshi sitting at the tea table, sipping tea and reading a newspaper. "Uncle Wang," Su Ming greeted. Sit looking up and seeing Su Ming, Wang Jianshi nodded with a smile, put down the newspaper and poured Su Ming a cup of tea. Wang Jianshi made an appointment to meet at Minranju. There was a subtext in this. It's not that Su Ming was asked to give gifts. The location of Min Ranja Tea House is neither prime nor remote. The decoration is average, the scale is small, and the number of customers is not too much. Just like its name, Min Ranja Tea House, it stands out among the many tea houses in Yangchuan City. It's unremarkable, not noticeable at all. Wang Jianxi's status was not suitable for an appointment with Su Ming at a high-end tea house in a hotel. Coming to Min Ranja meant that it was a very private environment where the two of them could communicate candidly. Wang Jianxi did not answer him directly, but smiled. Do you know what the boss of Min Ranja did before? Su Ming only knew that the boss of Min Ranja was Wang Jianxi's friend. As for what industry he was engaged in before, he knew nothing about it and shook his head. He used to work in security, but later resigned and joined the sea. Wang Jianxi smiled, and his words were extremely candid. Su Ming said nothing, waiting for his words. Sure enough, Wang Jianxi said to himself, a handsome guy like 007 in the movie will never be able to work as a security guard. He will look for attention wherever he goes. Those who work in their profession must look ordinary. Walking in the crowd indifferently, hiding yourself in the crowd, approaching the target quietly, looking for the most advantageous opportunity, and taking action decisively. Xiao Su, I see that you are deeply aware of this. Su Ming and Wang Hao had a good personal relationship. Ever since they were in college, they had gone to Wang Hao's house more than once. If it wasn't for work, they would always call him Uncle Wang Jianxi. But facing Wang Jianxi, Su Ming had never felt particularly relaxed. Of course, it was not the kind of nervousness or fear when facing a leader. Wang Jianxi rarely talks nonsense. Even in his daily life, he does not chat like ordinary people, and he does not cherish words like gold. But every word he says, if you think about it carefully, is very important. It has his intention. Due to his experience, Wang Jianxi has always had a ruthless vision and can see people and things thoroughly. Therefore, when chatting in front of Wang Jianxi, your brain must be spinning at high speed to keep up with his thinking, and you cannot talk randomly. Every sentence should be meaningful. Even regarding his relationship with the Wang family, Wang Jianxi was treated very well if he could invite him to drink tea at Min Ranju and be honest with him. Therefore, Su Ming was not prepared to make any detours with Wang Jianxi. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 523. Wang Jianxi's invitation to Min Ranju meant that he was willing to communicate with Su Ming as candidly as possible. Su Ming was not going to beat around the bush at this time and said directly, Uncle Wang, I have an idea to acquire the zoo and turn it into a private enterprise. Acquiring a company, or a zoo that was originally a public welfare science popularization institution, is by no means a trivial matter. Wang Jianxi's expression remained unchanged, showing no expression of surprise or surprise. He brewed tea in several small teacups in a leisurely manner. After the tea was poured, he put down the teapot and said, Try it. Drink the tea while it's hot, the aroma of tea will disappear when it cools down. Thank you, Uncle Wang. Su Ming picked up the nearby teacup with 2 fingers. Several small teacups reached the bottom, and Wang Jianxi made another pour with his own hands. While making tea, he said, from the day you took over the zoo, I guessed that you would have this idea sooner or later, but I didn't expect it. It's only been a few months since you brought it up, it's so scary. I'm not very sure, so I didn't tell anyone. I'll discuss it with Uncle Wang first, Su Ming said. Wang Jianxi nodded. Innovation and reform are being talked about everywhere now. According to my judgment, although there is no precedent for privatization, it is subject to discussion. Of course, animals cannot be privately owned, and ownership cannot be bought for any amount of money. The meaning of the word negotiation is negotiation. Both sides have their own bottom lines. If the other side's bottom line is exceeded, the matter will no longer be discussed. The scope of negotiation is the area between the two bottom lines of both parties. Of course, both sides hope that get more of that area. Wang Jianxi's first sentence was about the issue of animal ownership, which shows that this is a bottom line that cannot be touched. Fortunately, Su Ming didn't want to touch this bottom line. For questions about animals, you can refer to Zhao Yun's private museum. The antiques in the museum are owned by Zhao Yun. He is responsible for managing and using them, but they cannot sell them. From a practical point of view, this point is no different from the current actual situation, so it can be discussed. The second is the nature of the zoo. Although the city has never regarded the zoo as an important economic growth point. In the past, the zoo was a drag on the city's economy. However, no matter how dilapidated the zoo is, it must still exist. This is an important part of the city's cultural construction. Therefore, even after privatization, the corporate nature of the zoo must remain the same as it is now. To put it bluntly, a zoo is a zoo, providing a place for leisure and entertainment for the general public, rather than turning into a commercial community, let alone a CBD office building. This is not a problem. Su Ming has no intention of using the zoo's land for other purposes. Everything he does is based on animals. Specific details need to be further discussed and studied with relevant city departments. As for the issue of money and personnel, after privatization, the zoo will be Su Ming's private enterprise. The finances will naturally be the same as those of a private enterprise. Any profit will be Su Ming's, and any loss will be borne by him, and he will pay taxes normally. Personnel placement is not a problem at all for Su Ming. He has not thought about dismissing anyone for the time being. Finally, there is the acquisition amount. The privatization of the zoo will inevitably attract the attention of all parties. The zoo has existed for decades, and successive governments of Yangchuan City have also invested heavily in it. Therefore, Wang Jianxi judged that the amount of the acquisition money would definitely not be small. Not only cannot the price be low, but 80% of it will be at a premium. As for installments, don't count on it. You're kidding. Pay it off in 10 or 20 years. If you don't manage well and the company goes bankrupt, who can you turn to for the remaining money? Besides, will the value of money 10 years from now be the same as it is now? There is no way to calculate this. If it is too much, Su Ming will definitely not do it. If it is too little, the financial side will not accept it, and it will be difficult to reach an agreement. Have you ever heard of buying a house or a car in installments? Who has ever seen someone buying a business in installments? Su Ming thought about it for a while, and when it came to this point, it meant that there was something interesting about it, and then there was the issue of money. In order to further increase his confidence, Su Ming said, "Uncle Wang, we are here to talk about it now. It is not certain whether we can talk about it specifically." Wang Jianxi nodded. Everything he just said was just a judgment based on his experience and information. No one dares to say 100%. I understand your concerns. The purpose of privatizing the zoo is to travel lightly and develop the economy better. But if my company fails, it will bring new burdens to the government, Su Ming said. Do you think this will work? In addition, I will deposit an extra deposit in a bank designated by the government. As long as I run the zoo, the money will be supervised by the government. Huh, Wang Jianxi raised his eyebrows slightly. He did not expect that Su Ming would take the initiative to propose this suggestion. With this deposit, it shows Su Ming's sincerity. A big reason why it is difficult to privatize the zoo is that if the zoo goes bankrupt privately, the city cannot live without the zoo, and in the end the government will have to take over the mess again. My deposit is to give me reassurance. If I close down the zoo, I can deduct this deposit. Wang Jianxi nodded slightly. The money was nominally a deposit, but in fact, it was a loan with no interest and no repayment period. In this case, we are more certain that the negotiation will be successful. However, the money to buy the zoo, plus the deposit, is not a small sum. Wang Jianxi was very confused. He probably has a good idea of Su Ming's financial situation. He can probably come up with tens of millions if he grits his teeth. But what is needed now is several hundred million. Acquiring a zoo is not a matter of 1 or 2 days. Even if everything goes well, it may take until next year to be completed. Even so, where can Su Ming get these hundreds of millions in a year? Selling thousands of lure people to human traffickers is not enough. Uncle Wang, I will find a way to solve the money problem. There is still more than half a year, Su Ming said with a confident look. I'll leave the government affairs to you. There is no sign of this matter now, and you are not fully prepared. Wang Jianxi pondered for a moment and said, how about this? When you are sure that you are sure, submit a report to Lao He, let Lao He report it layer by layer, and I will try my best to promote it in the city. Okay. After leaving Minranju, Su Ming had a rough idea about the acquisition of the zoo. Wang Jianxi did not insist that it would be done out of caution. But with his status, there is no suspense at all. When he is sure that he can make this money, he can start the privatization process. So it comes back to the original question, how to make hundreds of millions as quickly as possible in a year. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 524. After returning to the zoo, Su Ming immediately asked the financial officers of several companies under his name to report the estimated annual profit statistics. The main income of the entertainment company is the live broadcast platform. According to the current operating conditions, if it can maintain the same level in the future, without affecting normal operations, the funds that can be used will be around 1 million per month. Of course, with the continuous development of the entertainment company, there may be a surge in revenue, but this is uncertain and so cannot be counted. Fishing companies and Dacian liquor industry are the two major revenue generators. In the past, when Zhou Jin was in charge, the annual income of the fishery company was tens of millions. Now that the scope of breeding has expanded, fish farming has become more economical and of higher quality, and the annual net profit can reach tens of millions. After the scale of Dacian liquor industry is expanded, it can also provide 2 to 30 million in funds a year. As for the restaurants in the zoo, the breeding industry in Bamboo Town, real estate companies, and some scrappy small businesses, either they have not yet developed, or their income is too small to count on. If he hadn't acquired the zoo, Su Ming would be considered a moderately rich man, earning tens of millions a year. This amount of money is not enough for acquisition. It is not even enough for security deposit. It can only be used for maintenance expenses after privatization. Brother-in-law, I have a trick. It's guaranteed to work, Nangong Huang said. Huh? What can you do, please tell me? Su Ming looked at him in surprise. As the saying goes, those who are obsessed with authority may have their own ideas constrained by various stereotypes, but this guy is an outsider, and sometimes his brain is quite good, and he may really be able to think of unexpected good solutions. Nangong Huang looked around and said 3 words with a mysterious face, loan shark. Going to borrow loan sharks, Su Ming almost spit a sip of tea in his face. Seeing Nangong Huang shaking his head violently, Su Ming realized that this boy was not asking him to borrow money at usury, but the other way around. Forget it, just figure it out yourself. Brother-in-law, listen to me, can't you spend tens of millions to open casinos, underground banks, and private loan sharks? How many losses can you make in a year? Don't worry, my family is a policeman, and we are not afraid of collecting money. I won't come back. Nangong Huang vowed. My brother-in-law, even if I follow what you said, I can't raise that much money, Su Ming said speechlessly. Then it's going to be difficult. Nangong Huang also had good intentions and said seriously, it's a tenfold increase in 1 year. It's not easy to handle. Real estate is not that violent. We can't count on the stock market. The rest, apart from drugs, is gambling. If you are lucky, you can double it tenfold overnight. It's possible to lose everything overnight, Su Ming said. Su Ming had thought about gambling. It's a pity that the jockey club is too petty. At least you can win a few $100 million for me, and then send people out to disrupt the situation. There will be competitions at the Hong Kong Jockey Club at the end of the year. The 4 major events have prize money of more than 100 million. If you participate as a horse owner, the Jockey Club will have no control over it. But 100 million is the total prize money. No matter how powerful Dafa Huohuo and Shive Along are, they cannot win all the awards. Speaking of which, Su Ming was very pleased that these 2 guys could get an award. And the lures, a bunch of paupers. A tribe has been passed down for thousands of years, so it should have accumulated something. Even if there are no artifacts, there are at least a few antiques. Even if you don't have antiques, diamonds and gold will do. Where is the legendary treasure that was promised? The people of Lure are quite good. They are very poor. The whole tribe has close to 3,000 people. They can't even raise $500,000 by selling iron and steel. Who makes them stick to the self-sufficient primitive tribal model? The most valuable thing in the whole tribe is probably that the bus was broken and it was still left in Iraq. Su Ming had no intention of getting a bank mortgage loan. He didn't want to stress himself too much by buying a zoo, and the interest rates on commercial loans were really high. After all the math, the only way to get rich quickly is through gambling. The road is also blocked. Long Wu, Long Wu. Su Ming recalled that middle-aged man with a resolute face. He was actually an elderly man. He really loved and hated him. Kindness. Long Wu? Wrong. Su Ming suddenly had an idea in his mind and captured something. Who said there is no huge profit industry that can increase tenfold in a short period of time? Isn't that what Long Wu does? I did what I said, found Long Wu's number on the phone, and dialed it directly. After the long-distance call was connected, the other side was very quiet, and there was a faint mechanical conversation sound coming from the microphone. I guess Long Wu was watching TV with his wife at home. Young Master Su, what reminds me of you, Long Wuban Bei said in Mandarin. 5th brother, I need your help with something. Lend me some help, Su Ming said. Long Wu on the other end of the phone was stunned for a moment, then he laughed. Wow, how many times have I told you that I'm not a gangster? Even you don't believe me. You're not a ghost. If you're not, then no one else is. Su Ming secretly slandered, and then explained, 5th brother blames me for not making it clear. I don't want young and dangerous people to cheat on their friends. I want to make movies, but I don't know how to do it. I want to ask you to borrow a group of professionals. From the director to the waiter in charge of tea. Making movies? When did you have such enthusiasm? Long Wuki asked. It suddenly happened. That's why I asked you, a professional. Su Ming smiled and said, you pay the salary, and I will never bargain. Borrowing people is common in the film industry, and some technicians will take jobs privately. However, Long Wu has been making movies for half his life. This is the first time he has heard that someone made a movie and the entire crew relied on borrowed money. If that's the case, people might as well do it themselves. It's obvious that Su Ming is an absolute layman. Long Wu was silent for a few seconds, then smiled and said, are you short of money? If you need it, I will definitely help you. Of course I'm short of money, very short of money. It's because you stopped me from getting rich at the racecourse last time, Su Ming said half-jokingly. Long Wu's personality is quite straightforward. If he asked for money, a few million should be enough. but a few million can't solve any problems. Instead, Longwu will look down on him and may misunderstand that he is forcing him to repay a favor by using the jockey club's affairs. He is not a beggar. Longwu did nothing wrong about the race course. After all, he didn't know Su Ming at that time. Even if they knew each other, if he didn't show up, the jockey club would find someone else to show up. Any large gambling organization in the world will deal with the methods of gambling masters. It is impossible to allow a gambling master to use the casino as an ATM. If it happened in Las Vegas, maybe the casino would directly find a gunman to kill Su Ming and throw him into the desert. But after all, it was related to Longwu, so he thought about it and said, in that case, why don't you be the producer and investor, and I'll be responsible for filming and distribution. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 525. Longwu's proposal did make Su Ming's mind move. Making a movie was just an idea that suddenly occurred to him. To be honest, it was because Jiao Xiao kept talking in his ear every time he called, and he was particularly short of money recently, so Su Ming had this idea. Of course, the film industry itself is indeed a highly profitable industry. The current common method of profit sharing in the mainland is that the total box office of a movie, after deducting about 5% of various taxes and fees, the remaining distribution and production parties account for 40–50%, and the theaters account for 50–60%, which is almost 55–50. Apart from the mainland box office, if the film's response is good, Hong Kong, Macau, Taiwan, Southeast Asia, and even the West will have film companies buy local distribution rights, and this money is purely for the distribution and production parties. In the past, when Hong Kong movies had not yet been introduced to the mainland, the total box office of movies in Hong Kong was generally in the millions, and this overseas distribution even made more money than in Hong Kong. In the past, the most popular films in Hong Kong only made tens of millions of yuan a year. With the opening of the mainland market, the market is getting bigger and bigger. Tens of millions of yuan is a complete failure. Any movie that can be put on the stage is considered a small amount of 100 million or 200 million, and 300 to 500 million is not uncommon. Among them, there are many small wins with big gains. Love is Not Blind cost less than 15 million yuan and raked in 300 million yuan at the box office. Lost in Thailand with an investment of 30 million yuan swept 1.3 billion yuan at the box office, which is more than 10 times the profit. Su Ming's idea is based on this. Anyway, the money he has is too little, far from enough to buy the zoo, and he can't find other ways to increase the value quickly in a short time. It's better to take a sum of money to try. Even if it fails, it won't hurt. If it succeeds, even if it can't make a profit of 10 or dozens of times, at least it can open up a new way to make money. But as Longwu thought, Su Ming is almost a layman in making movies and knows nothing about it. The 5 most critical roles in a movie are producer, director, supervisor, and screenwriter. He can only play 1.5 roles at most. Not only does he not understand the rest, but no one around him understands them either. The producer is the investor, which must be Su Ming, or Daowen Entertainment. The producer is the on-site agent of the investor, who is responsible for the investor, equivalent to the supervisor in the construction industry, the independent director in the board of directors, responsible for safeguarding the interests of the investor. Longwu's so-called cooperation is that he plays this role. The supervisor checks the artistic quality and market prospects of the entire film. Generally, he is a director who is very good in a certain aspect. For example, Johnny too often serves as the supervisor of various gunfight films. You can say that he is the director's deputy, but more like a senior consultant, who is not under the director's jurisdiction and can in turn restrict the director. Needless to say, Su Ming is definitely not a director. He doesn't even know how to use a camera. A good director is not only responsible for shooting, but also for casting. Through experience and a keen sense of film, he selects the most suitable actors to play the roles. Improper casting will also bring a blow to the film. For example, if the two roles played by Andy Lau and Chow Yun-fat were swapped in The God of Gamblers, which swept the Hong Kong box office, and Andy Lau played the domineering god of gamblers and Chow Yun-fat played the cynical younger brother, the consequences can be imagined, and the whole film would definitely become extremely awkward. Screenwriting is not as simple as writing a story, but also needs to change the story into a script suitable for filming. The same story, the scripts written by screenwriters of different levels will definitely have very different filming effects. This requires a very good familiarity with filming and shooting, and a deep foundation in writing. Su Ming has a little story outline in his stomach, not even a detailed plot, let alone being a full-time screenwriter, so he can only be considered half a screenwriter at most. In addition to these 5 key roles in filming the movie, the entire crew also has various people such as stage supervisors, props, special effects, etc. Every time the movie is over, several minutes of subtitles of the crew members can be printed out. Su Ming can't form this team at all now, and there is no way to form a team. There is also the later distribution. Contacting major theaters, arranging screenings, and promoting the film, each link requires professional personnel to operate, and Su Ming himself can't take care of it, and can't do it. If Long Wu comes to serve as the producer, these problems will be solved. With his connections and strength in the circle, he can pull up a team in minutes. Of course, this will inevitably involve sharing money with Long Wu. After calculating, after deducting all expenses, the box office in mainland China must be more than 3 times the investment before Su Ming can start making money. The money in the world is never earned by one person. People who want to eat alone often end up with. Between friends, mutual benefit and win-win are the way to get along for a long time. Moreover, Su Ming can see that Long Wu's request for cooperation between the two parties is actually very small in terms of business considerations. As a novice who knows nothing and rashly enters the film industry, Long Wu may not expect to make money. Anyone with a slightly normal mind probably thinks that this is burning money. The other party's real intention is probably to help him set up a crew, which can be regarded as a small favor at the Hong Kong Jockey Club last time. After only a moment's consideration, he agreed to Long Wu's request. "Mr. Su, how are you going to play? Let's talk about it in detail," Long Wu asked on the other end of the phone. Brother Wu, do you have a camera? Can we talk over the video? It's hard to explain over the phone," Su Ming said. "Oh, wait a minute." Long Wu was stunned for a moment, then there were footsteps over there, and then 2 people were heard talking in Cantonese. It seemed to be with his wife. Long Wu asked her not to post on Weibo because he had to do something. His wife said that he just stayed at home all day and had no business. She would scold him first. If Long Wu couldn't wait, he would go to the computer next door. Long Wu muttered something like, "I don't know how to use these high-tech things. You have to stay and teach me." Su Ming was overwhelmed by what he heard. First it was Zhao Yun, then Long Wu. These iron-willed heroes all turned into little sheep after marriage. After waiting for more than 10 minutes, Long Wu's voice sounded again on the other end of the phone. Both parties added QQ. Long Wu's QQ was a 10-digit long number with only 4 stars. His avatar was a handsome guy with yellow hair and a pointed face from the earliest batch. Now almost no one uses this avatar. There was also a signature file, "Welcome everyone to travel to Hong Kong," which made him look like a small civil servant of the Hong Kong Tourism Bureau. After a moment, his face with wrinkles like knife cuts appeared on the other side of the screen. "I didn't expect that this guy would wear a neat suit at home." A chubby auntie next to him greeted the camera. "Hi, Su Sheng, long time no see." "Hello, Madam Xiang," Su Ming grinned. "You guys talk, I have something to do, so I'll leave first." Madam Xiang nodded slightly and turned to leave the room. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 526. On the other side of the camera, Longwu looked serious as if he was facing a news reporter, as if he was being interviewed. He sat upright and stared at the screen with bright eyes. Fifth brother, please don't pretend to be a robot. This is not for the camera. Please relax, Su Ming said with a smile. Oh, seeing the light of the camera flash, it becomes a habit. Longwu also smiled, relaxed a lot, leaned back on the chair, lowered his head to find something in the drawer under the computer, and asked, "Why do you want to make a movie?" Looking at the smiling young man opposite the camera lens, although Longwu's expression was calm, 4 words came to his mind: young people are to be feared. Being able to independently invest and make movies in his early 20s was extremely rare even in the golden age of Hong Kong movies. Back then, those rich young people who were willing to make movies had a huge wealthy family behind them, and almost none of them made their fortune purely by relying on their own efforts. Even for himself, with the Xiang family behind him, which almost dominates the underground world order in Xiangjiang, what was he doing when he was in his early 20s? It seems that he is still playing a small role with Master Lu. I really don't have any money. Su Ming gave a rough outline of his plan to acquire the zoo. Longwu nodded slightly while listening. Finally he took out a cigar from the drawer and opened it with a cigar cutter, lit it and took a puff, exhaling thick smoke. Are you planning to focus on the tourism industry in the future? Longwu raised his eyebrows slightly. In recent years, filmmakers from Hong Kong have gone north to make money, and Longwu's companies have also produced many films for distribution in the mainland. Unfortunately, few of them have really made big money, and only a handful of them can exceed 100 million. Mainland China's film industry is a big piece of cake. Longwu started his career in film entertainment, so he was reluctant to miss it, but he could never find a breakthrough point. Even a big shot like Wang Jing, with a group of dazzling stars, has produced a few films that are lackluster. The box office seems to be pretty good. Excluding the cost of actors and filming, Longwu company does not make much money. Therefore, when he heard Su Ming, a layman, mention making a movie, his first reaction was not that he thought it was funny, but that he saw an opportunity. Su Ming doesn't understand movies, but he has a certain influence in the mainland. Cooperation between the two parties may open up a different situation. But if Su Ming is just playing for fun and has no ambition, it will be difficult for the two parties to cooperate in the long term. Su Ming's evaluation of Longwu was even higher. Sure enough, he had seen the world, and his vision was different from that of ordinary people. In just a few sentences, he caught the key points, and even the zoo didn't pay attention. I suddenly guessed my real future plan. But tourism is still not the whole of Su Ming's plan. Su Ming thought for a while and said, nowadays, many industries are in common. Whether it is tourism or movies, they are all leisure and entertainment. Not only do they not hinder each other, they can also promotion. Look at Disney, movies, tourism, and entertainment are all going great. If the movie can make money, of course I won't miss it. Are you going to build one? You are ambitious. Longwu's eyes lit up, he gestured a thumbs up at the camera, and said, the mainland's entertainment market is very large, enough to support a comprehensive large-scale entertainment kingdom. If you do it before others do, you can do a lot. Su Ming smiled. It was hard to say whether he could take action before others. There were many large companies in China with ambitions to establish, such as Wanda. I started a little late. But as Longwu said, the mainland market is too big, and this big pond is big enough to accommodate many giant crocodiles. Then how big are you planning to play this time? Longwu asked enthusiastically. Su Ming thought for a while. 10 million, up to 2 million more. 12 million is the highest, Chinese currency. Long Wu had just praised Su Ming for having great ambitions and a formidable future, but when he heard this number, his face twitched. Master Su, do you know what this number means? Long Wu said with a wry smile. Small cost, small production. Su Ming shrugged. 20 years ago, 10 million wouldn't be considered a small cost, and could barely be called a big production. But now, Long Wudio, 10 million is really not enough. If a famous director hires a few slightly famous actors, the 10 million will be used up. What else can he use to make a movie? An investment of 10 million means that there are no stars, no big directors, no special effects, and even very little filming. Speaking of which, theaters may not be willing to schedule the film. Su Ming, as Long Wu said, probably also knows that money is not worth much these days. In the past, Hong Kong's top stars were only paid 1 million Hong Kong dollars in salary for making a movie. 2 to 3 million is already considered a sky-high price. The special effects in the movie are nothing more than frivolous. Explosions and racing are already the biggest expenses. The crew only earns a few dozen or 100 yuan a day, and a movie with an investment of tens of millions can barely be considered a blockbuster. Nowadays, everything is priced tenfold. Movies with an investment of 50 to 60 million are everywhere, and those with an investment of over 100 million can find a dozen movies every year. If you mention the investment of 10 million, people will laugh. But it's not entirely impossible. As far as Su Ming knows, there are quite a few domestic films with a budget of tens of millions or even several million, and some of them, such as 33 Days of Love, have achieved good results. Theoretically speaking, investing tens of millions of dollars is not a dead end. Take it step by step. It's your first time to test the waters. Of course you have to be cautious. Su Ming said, you don't have to hire big names for the actors. There should be as few special effects as possible, and the main thing is authenticity. Do you have a script? What style of film? Long Wu asked. There is no specific script yet, only a rough idea of the story. Su Ming grinned. As for the style, it's a small production, of course it's a niche route, a horror film. Horror film? Long Wu's head was even bigger. Is there anyone making a horror film these days? The mainland's film censorship mechanism is so strict that it's hard to say whether a horror film can pass the censorship. Not to mention the market, the era of horror films has long passed. Horror films in mainland China and Hong Kong have almost disappeared in movie theaters in recent years. Occasionally, the box office is terrible. There is a possibility of a surprise in any film, even if it is a pure art film. As long as it is well managed and lucky, it is still possible to make a small profit. Only horror films don't have this possibility. Last year, Hong Kong released a nostalgic zombie film, which brought together many big names and paid tribute to classic zombie films. It had the sentiment and plot, and the shooting level was also good, but the audience just didn't buy it, and it lost a lot of money in the end. For the first time, Long Wu felt that he was a little unsure of Su Ming. A pitiful investment of 10 million, and a horror film that was doomed to fail. No matter how you look at it, Su Ming's concept of movies is still stuck in the past 20 years. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 527. Long Wu's ambitions were completely dispelled by Su Ming's few words, so much so that he was no longer interested in hearing the specific story. It doesn't matter what the story is. As long as it's a horror movie, the content and ending of the movie are destined to end badly. If you don't want to die well, you have to die well. Su Ming invested the money anyway. Long Wu didn't plan to make much money from it, and the loss couldn't be borne by him. In the end, Long Wu helped Su Ming build the initial team. At first glance, this lineup turned out to be pretty good. Produced by Daowin Entertainment Company. Producer, Long Wu himself. Both of them are well known in the country. Producer, Jang Ji-won, this late-blooming actor who came from a small role is definitely a strong actor. He is good at acting and directing. There are many filmmakers in Hong Kong who have feelings, and Jang Ji-won is one of them. In recent years, the horror film market has been in a downturn, but he insists on filming 2 horror movies. A movie called The Magic of Bone and a movie called The Exorcist of Twati were released locally in Xiangjiang, and both of them did well at the box office, at least they didn't lose money. Unfortunately, it did not pass the review of the State Administration of Radio, Film, and Television and was not allowed to be released in the mainland. This is also the reason why few people are making horror films now. Compared with the box office in the mainland, which can easily reach hundreds of millions, the market in Hong Kong is only tens of millions at best. If it cannot be released in the mainland, there is really no profit. Long Wu particularly emphasized that the success of these 2 dramas has a lot to do with Jang Ji-won himself starring in them. If someone else were to film the film, his salary would account for more than half of the investment. Being Su Ming's producer this time is just to make the film team look good, and he will not really participate in the whole scene. If you have time and drop by, maybe go to the set and have a look. To put it bluntly, it's just a name, nothing to count on. Finally, there are the director and screenwriter. As for small productions and niche themes, big directors can't count on them. Big names like Johnny Tu, Wang Jing, Lau Wei-kung, and Wilson Yip can be found by Long Wu, but they obviously won't invest in a horror film with an investment of 10 million. Inside. The director and screenwriter are the same person. Guo Zijian. As a layman, Su Ming had never heard of this name, and couldn't even remember that this person had appeared as a supporting actor in any movie. Long Wu has great confidence in this person and highly recommends him. Of course, this confidence is based on an investment of 10 million. With this investment amount, it is very good to hire Guo Zijian. If it weren't for Long Wu's help, Su Ming could only hire students from the film school who have not yet graduated to guide him. He serves as the director and screenwriter, responsible for assembling the crew and selecting actors. Have you really thought about it clearly? Horror movies need special effects the most. If you make a horror movie with 10 million yuan, not only will you not have good actors, but you won't even need special effects. You are destined to lose money. It is better to invest more, or change the subject. Romance is popular now. Movies, nostalgic movies, as long as you have 30 to 40 million, people will buy any bad movie. When it was over, Long Wu was still trying to persuade Su Ming. Although romantic and nostalgic films are good, they are not Su Ming's strong point and do not fit in with his master plan. Well, I'll take care of it, Guo Zijian. In a week at the latest, he will fly to the mainland with the crew. Where are you going to shoot? I'll tell him to fly directly there, saving you a transfer and saving you some money, Long Wu asked. Just shoot the scene at the zoo, Su Ming said. The whole movie is in the zoo, Long Wu asked. Su Ming nodded. Long Wu was completely speechless. Well, even the last bit of hope was gone. If horror movies can be combined with ancient legends and mysterious areas, such as Qinbei Mountain, Tianqi and Zhenengjia, there may be a glimmer of hope, which will at least be a selling point. What's in the zoo? Could it be that if a group of tigers and lions roar at the camera, the audience will feel so scary and terrifying? Then prepare the outline of the story. I'll tell Guo Zijian. Long Wu said, stroking his forehead. For the time being, Su Ming only told Nangongyan about filming the movie, but Nangongyan didn't say anything. On the one hand, she is more knowledgeable than Su Ming, on the other hand, after experiencing many incidents, she has an invisible confidence in Su Ming. It seems that there is no problem that this man cannot solve. Su Ming is a man who continues to create miracles. Behind the miracle is hard work and dedication. While waiting for Guo Zijian to arrive, Su Ming did nothing. He locked himself in the Feng Shui pavilion and conceived the whole story without leaving the house. This is a story that doesn't look scary and is a bit funny, but it's extremely scary if you think about it carefully. In addition, he also looked up the director Guo Zijian online. Unexpectedly, Longwu did not perfunctory himself. Although the director he recommended was not famous, he was by no means an unknown person. He had a profound foundation and immersion in movies. In the early days, Guo Zijian, like many famous actors and directors, played a small role in the theater, playing the role of young and dangerous. Due to his unremarkable appearance, he did not become famous. The experience of playing a small role allowed Guo Zijian to meet many big names in the industry. He worked as a screenwriter for Wilson Yip on 5 films, and sometimes also worked as a scene recorder and assistant director. He was very familiar with all aspects of film shooting. Assistant director of The Next Generation, screenwriter and assistant director of Big City, assistant director of Dragon Tiger Gate, Fire Heroes co-produced with Nicholas Tse, Shan Yu and other young actors, director of Wild Dogs, and was finally promoted by Stephen Chow to co-direct Journey to the West, Conquer the Demons. Hailed as reviving the spirit of Hong Kong films, the director of The Ring won 4 awards including Best Film at the 17th Hong Kong Film Critics Society Awards and Best Film at the 30th Hong Kong Film Awards. Especially for Journey to the West, Conquering the Demons, Su Ming found the subtitles and read them carefully. As for the so-called co-director, Guo Zijian's status on the set is actually higher than that of the assistant director. In many cases, he is the director, and Stephen Chow plays more of a role at this time. It is the role of the general director, and he is responsible for many of the specific directing tasks. Due to final publicity needs, it is usually Stephen Chow who appears. In the Hong Kong film industry, he is evaluated as a new generation of directors like Akira Kurosawa and Ang Lee who perfectly combine business and art. Su Ming has watched almost all of these movies, and several of them can be called thunderous. Judging from this experience, Guo Zijian is at least a qualified director. Although the hematopoietic mechanism of Hong Kong films is still running and can produce directors like Guo Zijian, Hong Kong films are still inevitably in decline. This can be seen from the situation of his film production company. He rents a 2-story wooden building. When the reporter interviewed him, the floor creaked when he walked in the office. If it weren't for his poverty, it probably wouldn't have been Su Ming's turn to ask him to make a movie. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 528. The news that Su Ming was going to make a movie inevitably spread. Cross-strait cooperation requires approval from higher authorities, so the government could not have been unaware of it. The zoo was chosen as the filming location, so preparations for the reception had to be made in advance, and the area had to be cleared when necessary. The zoo staff would definitely receive relevant notifications. The number of fans on Daowen Yuke's Weibo was increasing every day. After the 57 ethnic incidents, it finally broke through the 2 million mark. This was the best publicity position. It didn't cost a penny to do advance publicity. It was perfect for small productions with insufficient funds. Su Ming certainly wouldn't hide it. Before the crew arrived in Yangchuan City, he posted a message on Weibo saying the movie is being filmed, please look forward to it. The reactions from all sides were boiling. The Garden Bureau and the director were stunned for a while after hearing this. This Su Ming was still talking about acquiring the zoo a few days ago, and he was busy running around behind him. How could he suddenly make a 180-degree turn and go to make a movie again? I haven't heard that he has any relationship with the entertainment industry. I can't guess at all. Wang Jianxi at the municipal government felt a little nervous. He probably guessed that Su Ming was probably broke and wanted to make a fortune by making movies to raise enough money to buy the zoo. Theoretically, it was feasible. From filming to release, a movie could generate benefits in 3 months at the fastest. If the box office was hot, it was not impossible to make hundreds of millions. But Wang Jianxi was an official and he was more cautious. There were gains and losses in making movies. How could Su Ming, an outsider, be sure that he would make money? Besides, he had never heard that Su Ming had experience in the film industry before. Other people's news might be inaccurate, but Wang Jianxi's news was definitely correct. Wang Hao was Su Ming's closest comrade in arms. Even Wang Hao didn't know, which meant that Su Ming was indeed a novice. A novice, without any foundation, rashly engaged in an unfamiliar industry in order to raise a large sum of money in a short period of time. This was almost the same as gambling, and even more risky than gambling. Gambling could still rely on luck, but making movies was a professional job, and luck had nothing to do with it. This is just like swimming. If a person who can't swim dives into the water, no matter how lucky, brave, or determined he is, it will be useless. He will most likely drown. What on earth is this kid thinking? Wang Jianxi frowned. He used to think that Su Ming was very steady in doing things. Who would have thought that he would suddenly do something like this? It was too risky and gave people a very frivolous feeling. After thinking for a moment, Wang Jianxi called his secretary, Xiao Zhang. The municipal party committee will have a meeting this afternoon. Have you prepared the materials for the privatization of the zoo? Oh, I'm still preparing it. Put it aside for now and don't bring it with you for the time being. In the past, he could also guess that Su Ming didn't have enough money on hand, and he probably had to find a way to raise money, such as going to the bank for a loan. But he didn't expect that Su Ming would actually go to make a movie. If he spoke out at the municipal party committee meeting, and even convinced other leaders to agree to the privatization of the zoo, he was 80% to 90% sure of this, but Su Ming failed to make money and lost money on the movie, and couldn't afford the acquisition, then it would be a big joke. How can he work in the municipal party committee in the future? How will the leaders look at him? He is too unstable. It is like Su Ming digging a pit for him, the deputy mayor, to jump into. Of course, he believes that Su Ming definitely did not mean to deliberately pit him, and Su Ming himself also wants to make money. But making movies is too unreliable in Wang Jianxi's opinion. For the sake of safety, it is better to stop for the time being and not mention privatization at the meeting. Make plans after the movie is released. Wang Jianxi rubbed his eyebrows, shook his head and smiled. If it were in the past, he would never take the initiative to mention privatization without full confidence. He seemed to be too enthusiastic about Su Ming's affairs in the past year. He would seriously consider any small request from Su Ming, and even take certain risks to help. I hope this time, this guy can surprise me like usual, Wang Jianxi thought. The government's considerations are more complicated, but the people's are relatively simpler. I heard on Weibo that a movie was going to be made, and the excitement was so great. What movie? Spoiler. Is it Animal World, and invite Mr. Zhao Zhongxiang? Stupid, then it's not a movie, it's a documentary. A pseudo-documentary is also good. Why don't you invite Bear Grylls to compete to see who is the strongest man in the world? You guys are talking about something off the track. The director said it's a movie. I guess it must be about protecting animals, like HOH Zill. Wolf Totem. My cousin's aunt's third uncle's elementary school classmate's neighbor is guarding the gate of the zoo. There is an insider information that it is a horror movie. Have you got a brain? Yes, what kind of horror movie? That's nonsense. Is it a big bear eating a living person? Listen to his nonsense, who still watches horror movies now? That's not necessarily true. Have you seen an American TV series called Land of the Beasts? It's about animals all over the world who have wisdom and unite to resist humans. I've seen it, it flopped after the first season, and it hasn't been renewed for the second season. Who is the director and who is the lead actor? The director doesn't have time to deal with us. He must be busy talking about life and ideals with the actress now. I'm so envious. I want to have a secret role too. Do you need a supporting role? I'll sign up. It's free. Compared to the invisible and intangible on the internet, the staff of the zoo are more direct and enthusiastic. The notice has been issued, and the filming location is in the zoo from beginning to end. They finally have the opportunity to get close to the stars. As soon as they get to work, the office is full of discussions, all about movie-related topics. Who do you think the director will invite to be the male lead? Sister Tong, talk to the director and invite TF boys. They are young, sunny, and beautiful boys. They fit the image of our zoo very well. Wow, TF boys, great, great, I'd be happy if I could touch them secretly. Two nymphomaniacs, dung boys, be careful to touch shit. Get lost. I'm breaking up with you for 5 minutes. No, 10 minutes. Will you invite Lu Yifei? Fan Bing Bing? Don't invite Bai Bei, her breasts are too flat. The male employees actually think the same. Sister Tong pondered and said, what do you think if the director of the zoo plays the leading role himself? Hey, sister, you are smart, the employees laughed and said, why don't we all play a role in the zoo? For the first time, Nangong Huang did not speak out in public. He was worried. The employees of the zoo just wanted to watch the fun, and no one considered the box office. Nangong Huang felt that he was a young man with a sense of mission. His brother-in-law invested so much money to make a horror movie, and he would probably lose money. He, the brother-in-law, had received great kindness from his brother-in-law, so he had to do something. Brother-in-law, how about I play the leading role for you for free? Nangong Huang had a tragic expression on his face as if he was sacrificing himself to feed the tiger. Let's talk about it later. If I go to Japan to invest in a movie in the future, I can consider you. Su Ming looked at him and moved his eyes to the airport in the distance. The flight that the crew took finally arrived. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 529. Hello Susheng, my name is Guo Zijian. Young director Guo Zijian is actually almost 40 years old this year. He is wearing a simple pair of jeans and a printed tank top, which is simple and refreshing. His short hair is naturally curly and he has black framed eyes. He doesn't look like a director, but rather has the temperament of a boy from a cram school on the street. There are a lot of people like this on Xiangjiang Street, and they are inconspicuous. No wonder he often plays the role of passerby on TV. After a brief exchange of greetings, the group of people took the equipment and got into 2 official vehicles of the zoo and went straight to a 4-star hotel near the zoo. This was where the entire film crew stayed during the filming. Guo Zijian didn't talk much and was relatively silent along the way. He occasionally chatted briefly and seemed very polite, giving people a gentle feeling. He seemed to be the big brother next door. He should belong to the popular type of warm man. But there is not as much nonsense as the warm men in TV series. Arriving at the hotel soon, the rooms had been reserved in advance. Nangong Huang took the room cards and sent everyone to their rooms with Su Ming. There are a total of 13 people in the film crew, 3 women and 10 men, including the director and 14 people. The scale is extremely small. By the same token, the expenses can also be kept to a minimum. There were 4 rooms in total. Su Ming looked at his watch and saw that it was only 3:30 in the afternoon. Director Guo, you have worked hard all the way. You should rest first. At 6 o'clock in the evening, I will treat everyone to dinner and clean up the dust for everyone. Susheng, if you don't mind, I want to talk about movies first. Guo Zijian smiled a little embarrassedly. Mr. Xiang didn't tell me anything. He only said that he had a friend who wanted to make a small budget movie and asked me to team up. Now I don't know what we're going to do next. Su Ming liked his style quite a lot. He didn't make false moves or make false moves. Regardless of whether he was a good director or not, he was at least a serious person. Okay, Nangong Huang, you stay and see if we need anything. Director Guo and I will go to the next room to chat. Su Ming turned around and went out. Director Guo, please. Guo Zijian lived in a separate room. After entering the door, Su Ming poured 2 glasses of water and briefly told him his ideas. While he was talking, Su Ming had been secretly observing the young director's expression. Guo Zijian never interrupted and listened quietly to Su Ming's words. Occasionally, he nodded slightly to indicate that he understood. If he didn't understand, he would convey it with his eyes and clear facial expressions. When he heard about the horror movie and the 10 million investment, Guo Zijian didn't show any surprise. That's about it? After confirming that Su Ming had finished speaking, Guo Zijian was silent for a few seconds, as if he was trying to figure out his thoughts, and then said, Su Sheng, if I understand correctly, you need to complete the filming and release it as soon as possible. The shorter the time, the better. In addition, the main actors in this movie are animals, live animals, not special effects. Yes, Su Ming nodded. It's a very magical idea. This alone is enough to attract people's attention. What's more, your story is also very. Guo Zijian paused, as if looking for a suitable word. Well, it's very scary and exciting. I'm shuddering, but are you sure those animals can cooperate with the filming? I'm sure I'm a pretty good animal trainer myself. But I don't understand the film industry at all, Su Ming said. Oh, I remembered that you were responsible for directing Zhang Tianwang's animal concert. I have to say, it was great. After Guo Zijian praised him, he did not wait for Su Ming to say a few polite words, but continued without interruption. Said, then I think there are 2 things we have to do next. The first is to perfect your story as soon as possible and turn it into a complete script. The second is to select actors according to the script. Although they are mainly animals, but there are still many human actors and actresses, as well as many extras. Okay, how do you need my cooperation? Su Ming asked. The idea of the story is yours. Only you, Su Sheng, know best what the animals can do. In addition to the filming process, determining the script and selecting actors requires your full participation. If possible, why don't we start discussing it now? Script. As Guo Zijian spoke, he took out a large stack of blank A4 paper and a pencil from the shoulder bag he carried with him. You don't mind if I smoke, do you? Su Ming took out the cigarette and put it on the table. Guo Zijian shrugged and said it was casual. The 2 of them began to perfect the horror story in Su Ming's mind little by little. In the room, Su Ming smoked 1 cigarette after another. Soon, the ashtray was filled with cigarette butts like a small forest. Guo Zijian's hands, brain, and mouth seemed to be able to work separately. During the discussion, he kept writing and drawing on paper, quickly sketching out the scenes, characters, and animals in his mind. If you're not satisfied, you'll roll it into a ball and throw it into the trash can. The trash can will soon be filled with waste paper balls. Time flies by, and both of them are immersed in the discussion. Occasionally, they will have disputes over a certain plot or character, or they will jointly think about and study a certain plot, a certain character's psychological activities and personality. Dong dong dong. There was a knock at the door, and Nangong Huan came in from the outside. Just as he was about to speak, he was choked by the smell of smoke in the room and coughed as soon as he opened his mouth. Brother-in-law, at 6 o'clock, you can prepare for dinner. Nangong Huan fanned the cigarette in front of him. You go first and I'll think about it later. Please take my colleagues to eat. I'll just eat instant noodles. Su Ming and Guo Zijian spoke at the same time, then were stunned and smiled at each other. Su Ming then remembered that he was the boss. How could he let his employees go hungry? He crushed the cigarette butt, stood up and invited, "Director Guo, you should eat something. No matter how busy you are, you still have to eat." "Okay." In the hotel dining room, there was no toasting as imagined. The meal was quickly finished. Guo Zijian skillfully arranged the next work for everyone in the crew at the dinner table. Half an hour later, he and Su Ming returned to the box to discuss the plot. The wall clock in the room pointed to 12 o'clock, and Su Ming finally put out the last cigarette. Guo Zijian piled up a thick stack of manuscript paper and stuffed it into his bag. "Let's leave it like this for the first draft. I'll think about whether it can be done better," Guo Zijian said, grabbing his hair. "Okay, then you can rest first." Su Ming stood up and was about to say goodbye. "Wait a minute." Susheng. Guo Zijian looked at the night outside the bed and said, "Susheng, why don't you take me to the shooting site to take a look at the surrounding environment? Only then can I have a clear idea of the overall picture of the movie." Su Ming was stunned. He met a workaholic. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 530. Su Ming has always felt that he is quite dedicated. Compared with Guo Zijian, he is simply a slacker. Moreover, Guo Zijian has a very commendable quality. This crew is a temporary team he rented and does not participate in dividends. Everyone's income is calculated on a daily basis. Although it is a friendly price, Guo Zijian's daily salary is not low. The longer the time went on, the more money he could make. But when he expressed his hope that the filming would be completed and released as soon as possible, Guo Zijian immediately got into work and did not delay deliberately to make more money. "I called Tony. This guy was hanging out in some nightclub." The other end of the phone heard cries and heavy metal music like World War. "Not long after, I saw several red dots approaching in the night sky, and the sound of propellers sounded from the top of the building. Come on, Director Guo, I'll show you the panoramic view." Su Ming smiled and pointed the way. Along the way in the corridor, I passed several other rooms of the crew. The lights were still on in the rooms. It seemed that the entire crew had not rested. When he saw the two small helicopters on the roof, Guo Zijian beamed, "Susheng, is this plane rented or is it your own?" "It's personal." "What's wrong?" Su Ming shouted, taking the lead in boarding the plane and patting Tony's face in the driver's seat in front. "My dear young man, I hope you didn't drink too much." "Don't worry, boss. I can fly this little toy plane even when I'm asleep." Tony laughed loudly, "It's just that my legs are a little weak. Those little girls are so enthusiastic. Fortunately, I don't have to fly the plane legs to press the accelerator and brake." Su Ming. "Susheng, can we use this helicopter when we are filming?" Guo Zijian asked loudly. "No problem, I will try my best to meet all your needs." Su Ming answered loudly. "Oh boss, if you say that in a gay bar, I'm sure there will be many strong men willing to work for you for free," Tony said loudly. "You didn't drink too much, did you?" Su Ming felt that it might have been a mistake to call Tony to fly the plane. Fortunately, he always had a tardigrade's unbeatable Xiaoqiang charging ball on hand at all times, even if the plane falling. "Why are you talking about this? You are a bitch." The plane took off again and flew towards the zoo. The shooting location was not only limited to the zoo campus, but also included a large area of the back mountain and part of the reservoir. If there were no airplanes, it would be difficult to use cars. Yangchuan City Armed Police Detachment. Deputy Detachment Leader Nangong Jian has been a little upset recently. The Provincial Corps, in accordance with the national spirit, requires the police forces in each city to thoroughly study the spirit of the speeches made by the superiors and effectively implement the concept of co-building a harmonious society with the police and the people. So, the team has various conferences and small meetings all day long, summarizing reports and making speeches. Nangong Jian used to be a serious combatant. After being transferred to the Armed Police Detachment, he basically worked in management work, and he really didn't adapt to it for a while. If you just hold a meeting to give a speech, that's fine. The office has a large group of civilian cotters who come in through connections. They can take care of the speech drafts and summaries. Nangong Jian only needs to read them during the meeting. However, the above requirement is practical implementation. This is not a problem that can be solved by holding internal meetings. Actual actions must be taken. A word from a high-level person becomes a spirit when conveyed to the middle-level people. When it reaches the lower cities, it evolves into a large, complex, and even bloated theoretical system. Then relevant units in various places are very busy in order to implement this theory effectively. The top management keeps giving various speeches, turning them into various spirits, and deriving various theoretical systems, which are then implemented by the people below. This is the cycle of reincarnation day after day, year after year, in the entire constitution. What's the use of saying this? Let's deal with the matter at hand first. The political commissar of the detachment is Nangong Jian's old leader. After hearing Nangong Jian complain a few times, the political commissar glared at him. At such an old age, he can't just talk. Why is there no gatekeeper yet? Is this what a deputy detachment leader of a municipal-level armed police detachment, a mature leading cotter, should say? Company commander, this is crazy. The political commissar was so angry that he dropped his teacup on Table Mountain and glared fiercely. Hi, Nangong Jian waved his hand and said, I mean, how can our armed police practice co-construction between the police and the people? Their police officers can visit with the people every 2 days to talk to each other. How about criminal police? We can catch a few thieves, but our armed police have absolutely nothing to do. Should I lead the troops to help old men and women cross the street? That is also the job of the traffic police. What Nangong Jian said is indeed true. It is difficult for the armed police force to handle it. The national armed forces, essentially the country's violent machine, are divided into internal and external forces. The armed police force, also called the internal security force, is internal and suppresses internal unstable factors. To put it bluntly, the main imaginary enemy of the armed police is the common people. Of course, they are the rebellious people. The armed police have their own station. Unless a mass incident occurs or the police requests assistance, the armed police cannot leave the station without authorization. What kind of police-citizen co-construction are we going to do now? How to do it? Without large-scale natural disasters, such as floods and earthquakes, it is almost impossible for the armed police force to come into contact with ordinary people. Organizing and studying various spiritual activities is the job of the political commissar according to the division of responsibilities. Nangong Jian is the political commissar's confidant. The eldest brother is rich, so the younger ones will benefit from it. The eldest brother has something to do, and the younger ones have to do their best, so the job falls on Nangong Jian. Why can't you change your thinking? The political commissar picked up the cup again and scraped off the tea foam on it with the cup lid. Change your thinking, Nangong Jian didn't explain. The political commissar was silent for a few seconds and said, the police and the people work together, the police and the people work together. There are not only the police, but also the people. Both sides perform their duties and contribute to this big goal. This is not what our armed police are supposed to do, a one-sided matter. Nangong Jian picked up the water bottle and refilled the cup for the political commissar. The political commissar took out a pack of soft Chinese from the drawer, took one for himself, smoked one and threw it to Nangong Jian, and said slowly, Nangong, conquer the world. Military commanders rely on civil servants to rule the world. This is a time of peace, so your mind must keep up. Do you understand what I mean? Well, I know you, company commander, are doing this for my own good. Nangong Jian put the cigarette in his ear, then I'll go back and think about it. Okay. Before Nangong Jian could walk out of the office door, The political commissar knocked on the table from behind. Take down the cigarette. What does it look like? Haha. Nangong Jian, who was in his 40s, still looked like a naughty recruit in front of the old company commander. He scratched his head, took the cigarettes off his ears and stuffed them into his pockets. However, as soon as he left the office door, the expression on Nangong Jian's face changed instantly, and he regained the dignity that a leading cadre of a municipal armed police detachment should have. As soon as he returned to his own office, the phone rang, and he saw it was his second brother calling. Second brother, what's the matter? Nangong Jian answered the phone. When are you free? Go and see your future son-in-law. Oh, it's the battle of the Russian army, right? Second brother, your son-in-law is quite exaggerated. Yes, our country doesn't have an army. I have to be the son-in-law of the Russian army. Who will he help in the future? Okay, I understand. I'm afraid it won't work recently. I'm busy here. Hey, I'm not just a police officer. Things to build together.